So it being Women's Month, we were brainstorming ideas of what sort of content a land might want to have as part of Women's Month. And um, the idea of the feminine power in our organism really struck me as something that's really relevant in Women's Month. It's not only the products that we have, but really the manifestation of the feminine in our organism and all the different layers of it that I thought would be a wonderful thing to showcase because it was consciously something that we wove in from the very start. And it's everywhere. It's in the structure of the program that we've put together when we're looking at palliative care and when we're thinking about our new lines of care. It's in the very nature of the structure of our organism in the biomimicry. It's in the way that we communicate, it's in our values, and it's in our culture. And it was a very deliberate intention at the start to weave in and to rebalance the feminine. So maybe the first two should be the ones to kick us off, Shivani and Linda.
Okay, well, I'll start. So I guess first thing to say, which is a bit of an obvious thing to say, is that the three co-founders of Aligned were all women, myself, Shivani, and Victoria. So that came through straight from the beginning.
Was that intentional? Or it just happened like that?
A good question. You probably have to ask Shivani that more than me because she's the connector. You know, that's her superpower, is connecting people. I know I clicked with Shivani, so we just knew that was going to happen. Shivani, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think the way the three of us came together is partly fortuitous, right? Like caring about the same things, crossing paths. But I would say the one piece of our story and the way we kicked off that is very connected to this theme of feminine power is Linda, that you had all of this experience and know-how, and in that moment of like career junction for you, there was a path where the possibility was actually that in essence you'd hand over your know-how to some men and those men would commercialize those ideas. And then there was a different path, which was like actually that you would build something yourself. And I think there is something about as women looking out for each other to say, actually, this is incredible, like what you know, and also not just what you know, like about what you've done in the past, but what you know the world needs looking forward. And I mean, that was your piece of it. For me, initially, I couldn't be involved because I had a conflict of interest with a governance role. And there was also something about that, right? It's like I can continue to put my attention and energy into essentially a structure that comes out of a more patriarchal world, like a traditional structure. Or I can come out of that space and the kind of status associated with that space and then do this other thing, which is uncertain and ambiguous and, just kind of, much more based on an intuition as opposed to something that's existing and structured. So I think the feminine power stuff is there in the story, in the origin story.
So interesting. I wonder if all our stories were like that, actually all four of us had to make a choice to leave something and leave another world where we had a different kind of power, a different kind of position, a different kind of authority in a world that was so traditional, and take a risk actually on something that we not only believed in, but with people that we wanted to work with, doing something that was so different to what the world had known up to then. And I mean, in many ways, this was the first time I'd ever worked with only women. That's not my story. And so a lot of the first year of my life at Aligned was just coming to terms with everything feminine in me because it was so obvious in the line that, okay, there's no escaping the feminine here and having to come face to face with it. But the point I was making, though, is that it seems like all our stories had to do with leaving a world where we were quite established. Yeah, that's more traditional. I don't remember now whether that was your story, Ush.
Oh, very much so. I left corporate structures that, yeah, were very top down, logical, structured, action oriented, and really didn't foster connection or communication effectively, or any kind of understanding of the network and interface between people that exists. Um, and the kind of roles that I was in were about communication and connection. So I suppose it was most obvious to me that this was an anachronism that had to sit outside a formal structure that usually operates in a corporate, and not really respected in the same way that you know the more logical structures can be. So it's actually ironic, obviously, with a numerical kind of training, but a practice in communication, how the two were uncomfortable to sit together in a traditional structure because the balance was off. There wasn't an equal power given to both. And very much part of my driving motivation, since then has been about creating spaces where there can be excellence and it's not at the cost of structure. There's a different way of creating excellence in the world and fostering great outcomes that I want to be part of pioneering.
Mm.
Yeah.
For me, there's something about like in the transformation like of systems of the world that like one of the early stages is where all you do is there's representation of a group that was othered, but in the same spaces, that the spaces themselves don't change. So, I think if you think about South Africa coming out of its apartheid history, I think we're still at a stage where like it's just black representation in structures that were designed coming out of a colonial and then apartheid world. And then I think it's the same for women in a patriarchal world. The first step is that all you do is have an invitation to participate, permission to participate, but those structures still represent the old world. And then the next stage is to say, actually, like, how would we redesign, this if we came at it from a different perspective? And our lived experience of that has been that we've had to redesign like everything.
Yeah. For me as well, we're talking so much about connection, and people come together to start businesses, and there'll be this thing. No, there was a meeting of the minds, and for us, very much it's a meeting of the minds, and so much also of the heart. And that's also been something from the beginning. That what we wanted to do was bring more compassion into the healthcare system, and and make it person centric. One of our core values is kindness. I know that when new people start with us, they're so struck by that, and then they actually see it in action as well.
Yeah. Do you know what yeah, so many things that come to mind. When I started, I remember having to face like I said, my own understanding of femininity and feminine energy and feminine power and like all of those words. And the classic understanding of female being emotional, female being soft, female being teary, and all of those things. Even though I'm a woman, that wasn't my understanding of myself, mind you. and everything that was labeled feminine with that language of soft and flowery and fluffy and all of that, I wanted nothing to do with. And so part of what I had, and I remember where I'd come from in all the male dominated worlds, and I lived in many male dominated worlds, in the church, in the workplace, in my family, lots of males. So having come from all of those worlds, where part of what was expected and what was defined by the feminine to be in that kind of language, that soft, that ew, I'll say ew because that was my view of it. What was nice about coming to Aligned was meeting women who I thought were really smart, really strong, really decisive, really knew what we wanted to do. We wanted to do something bold and audacious and all of that. And it didn't feel fluffy. So I really liked that. Then I liked being introduced to just other language that relates to the feminine. So the importance of honoring the intuition, for example, which is so unique, uniquely, I think, a power of the feminine. Flow, understanding flow, understanding listening, empathy, like all of this whole other world of feminine that I knew intuitively the world needed so desperately. But I hadn't actually linked it to just feminine. I just thought this is what the world needed. But I didn't know how to be all of that and have all of that while rejecting the soft and fluffy of feminine. And so figuring out a way to integrate a way of being and an understanding of feminine has been a very interesting journey for me. I don't know how you guys remember me at the beginning, whether I was glitchy.
But I think it's similar for all of us, right?
Yeah.
It's the the journeys. I mean, Ish and I both coming from an actuarial background, and you and Linda both coming from a clinical background.
Yeah.
We come from these scientific, linear, action-oriented. The emphasis is on the doing. We come from those worlds, and it's not to say that there isn't value in it. It's exactly the integration. It's how do you bring that together, and it's the and how do you stand in ambiguity, and how do you navigate using all of your intelligences, not just your head, and how do you lean into interconnectedness and community and connection and all of these beautiful things. And so the amplification of like what the possibilities are when you can bring like all of that to the table, that feels so powerful to me, as opposed to like it's either or, one is better than the other.
Agree.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
me,
Go, Ush.
I was just going to say that one of the powers of a feminine energy is adaptability and a multi-focus. And, while having single focus and having, some driving forces obviously essential, the ability to hold a multi-focus
I like that.
is essential, especially if we're going to talk about value-based care. Where we
like
are
that.
actually at the center holding the tensions. So the way we are must mirror the purpose that we have in the world. And just thinking about that adaptability and the strength of interconnectedness and adaptability as something you can rely on rather than something that is flaky. I think is one of the misconceptions of those aspects of femininity, at least in my understanding. Because what you want is to offer feminine strength, the best version of femininity, in the same way that you want to integrate the best version of masculine energy, which can be relied on between each other. If interconnectedness is something you can rely on, and you don't have to have just directives in order to facilitate action, then aren't we in a different paradigm?
Yeah.
the thing you said, Ursh, about the best version of masculinity is also so important, because I think, part of what we've experienced in the world without integration is the masculine without the balancing feminine. And that hasn't led to the best version of masculinity, which has been detrimental not just to women, but also to men, and to the planet. And so there's something about, like, as you can bring the feminine back, what that also opens up in the possibilities for that best version of I don't think you can experience the best version of the masculine without, like, a true shoulder to shoulder with the best version of the feminine. And that's really exciting, if you think about all of the challenges that we face in the world, how much more powerful we'd all be if we could really stand shoulder to shoulder and bring the best of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Linda.
The other thing, the other aspect of feminine energy is that ability to create containing and a safe sort of container. And so for me, as working at Aligned, it's been this feeling of being safe enough to bring authentic me to the table, as opposed to that mask that, so often you had to put on that persona as you walked through the door of the big corporate institution. And that's that I think, it's great.